So it's taken me a while to figure out exactly what it is I like about Hawkeye and why I like it. Because I've read other things by Matt Fraction, the writer, and it's not that I disliked it, but I didn't like it as much. And there are moments when I've looked at some of David Aja's work that I didn't like nearly as much. So what is it about this book? And I think this issue does a really good job of pointing it out, which is that ultimately it's about a team. It's about the two of them together. And so here we are in the second issue, so I thought we'd talk about dualities, the two people working on this, and in many ways the two main characters. And so what I find that you get with this book is two types of storytelling at the same time. And one of it is the precision of the art. When you look at a page like this, the first page of issue 2, it is so designed, it is so precise with the lines going straight through it, and you can see kind of like how these lines are here, 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 all this stuff shooting through into this page. There's such a planned and scientific thought process to it. Yet the stories and the writing, for example, even here on the okay, this looks bad. The sense of humor is so warm, it's so heartfelt, and in many ways, Matt Fraction's work is sentimental. It's not something that's scientific at all, and I think it's the combination of those two things that really come together and make this thing work. And something could be said very similar with Clint and Kate, that these two characters work well together, and that's part of the fun of the story, is getting these things to kind of work together. It's also, as I say, like the sense of humor on this book I love. I love little tiny things like this where you get to see Clint's perspective of the world and how it does it all over the place. I love it when he's can't understand the language that's being used, so it's just like something Russian or Italian or something. Like those little comments I think are really fun throughout. And early on we get a sense of like just the way the book works. Little things like this where they slow time down to get a sense of how he views the world, that he sometimes can literally slow things down and calm down so much for that precise shot. And I just love the interaction of these two characters, and I love the kind of look of it. This sort of Clint as kind of a teacher boss, and Kate kind of as the learner kid, but in all honesty, oftentimes he's the one that seems out of place, even though he's been doing this longer, even though he's older, even though he should have that kind of response. She is in fact the one that's far more comfortable in these type of events. There's a reason why he's constantly checking his collar and altering and feeling awkward in these type of events, where she, I don't know if you guys caught the sort of storyline with these guys, but she is a daughter of a very rich man, so this is type of things that she's used to. And yet again, we see all these great just methods of how to tell a story. These little moments embedded within moments. And yet at the same time, for as non-superhero-y as this book sometimes is, it's extremely aware of itself as a superhero book. And so there's a lot of inside knowledge that only superheroes would know, or superhero fans would know. Now, I don't know every single character, but this is the Owl. I don't know who this is. Hammerhead, Tombstone, Madame Mask, Kingpin. I mean, there's not things that just the average person picking this book would see it. But if you are a person who reads a lot of these, there's a lot of sense of, all right, this really is the Marvel universe. And so even though it's a very different book, it's still clearly in that book. And we also get these great villains, bringing up both his past, that being Hawkeye and Clint's past as a circus performer, and obviously the direct references to the swordsman. That yet again, this book is a sense of identity. It's a character still trying to prove himself and kind of live up to the name. And there's a lot of kind of proving yourself as a hero in this issue, especially in terms of Kate and Clint's attitude towards each other. Then there's this great little moment right here. This is maybe not directly a Watchmen reference, but clearly there are some Watchmen-ish moments. Just the simple idea of splitting the 3x3 grid into sort of an A group and a B group. So Kate, Clint, Kate, Clint, Kate, Clint, so forth and so on, and that kind of alternating imagery. And you can definitely see the Watchmen stuff in this image here, with the blue and the kind of pinkish, orangish look here. These stories are clearly on some level, if not acknowledging directly Watchmen, it's doing the same thing that Watchmen did. And I think that that's an important thing to think about, because that was a book that had so much thought of how to set it up. And then we have this wonderful panel here where it even seems to be suggesting at least a little bit of Dark Knight Returns, where the windows as panel motif of that book. I'm not saying that this is by any means that book, but there's some great work in this issue. These moments here, okay, this looks bad. Yet again, clinical preciseness with sort of tongue-in-cheek fun at the same time. I also wanted to show you guys something I found online that really does tell you the sense of preciseness and thought process that he's going through, just how much he thinks this through. So here is his plan of what he wants to do with this story. I assume he kind of thumbnailed the entire page, figured out the basic concept, and then put this in, and then started creating it based on this. But that's the level of thought that he's putting into this, how to really make everything kind of match up. And so all the angles, all this stuff, all just matches together. It's very scientific, very well thought out. And I love this little ending. The "Come on, hot girl, Hawkeye, let's get out of here." Great idea, Hawkeye. And I shouldn't have called her hot girl. That was a slip of the tongue. But it really is like showing these two as equal partners. And in fact, even though we will not read them because it's in Volume 2, eventually Kate gets her own issues. So it splits between the Clint Hawkeye stories and the Kate Hawkeye stories. And honestly, I ended up kind of liking the Kate Hawkeye stories in some ways better. I thought they were a lot of fun and really interesting. As we can see here, that they really are playing these two as partners, pairing them off, bookending this page with them, and it's such a neat, cool way of showing these characters. And it's this interchange between the two of them, with exception of this section right here, where Clint gets all of it. It's all back and forth between Clint and Kate. And I just think that this is a really, really neat book. And even here, this is pretty tiny, but I still love this kind of thought towards how to present this book. And it's definitely a book about dualities, or an issue about dualities. Matching up things, putting a lot of stuff in symmetrical shapes, sort of like issue 5 of Watchmen, where everything was about symmetry. Because here we have the beginning of the book, here we have the end of the book, and they're the exact same page design, so that we begin and end the book at the same way, in many of the same lines. There you go.